The flaky power also fit in with the Great Blizzard story. This is I don't know if you're aware of this event. This was February of 1978. This was the Great Blizzard, the Great Blizzard of '78, which pretty much shut down the state of Massachusetts for a week. So, I mean, I'm sure you get plenty of snow at home as well. This was kind of unusual for we ended up with a good meter of snow on the ground, in one snowstorm. And coincidentally, I was doing the first large-scale test of ODS-2 that evening. I was in the mill, and I decided, okay, I'd done the basic debugging, and it looked like, the code worked. We had started with ODS-1 on VMS just because, that was what was transportable to the RSX machine that we were using. And so I decided, all right, well, let me take our public user disk on the VMS machine and copy it to an ODS-2 volume. And that'd be a nice kind of a large scale test of the file structure. And so I took the spare disk, initialized it, and started the copy running. And it was running and running and running. A lot of files to move. And at some point, all of a sudden, it stopped with a bad directory format error. And I thought, this is, if the directory's gone bad, there's a bug. And so I started collecting data. All right, what was the file? What was the copy doing? What directories was it working with? What did they look like? And I tried to start gathering this information. And so right around this time, the power started to get flaky because it was snowing gangbusters outside. It was late evening. My normal mode was, well, if there's a snowstorm, I'm going to go home late. Because I've always found the stationary object problem to be simpler than the moving object problem. When I'm driving on a snow-covered road, I would much rather deal with telephone poles rather than other moving cars. So I was working on this. We took a power hit, system crashed, and I brought it back up and tried some more, and we took 2 more power hits, and then the system wouldn't come up anymore. I thought, all right, I think they're telling me to go home. So I went home. On the way out, the security guard said, "What do you mean you're going home? There's 10-foot snow drifts and stuff." I said, "Well, all right, fine. If I can't make it through, I'll come back." I did make it home. I had a 3-foot wall of snow out by the driveway. I eventually got through that, got home, and so 2 days later, we were sufficiently dug out that I was thinking about this problem again. It's all right. Well, I didn't have enough information to make any headway. Well, let me go back in. The governor had closed the roads. I figured, well, you know what? Right, the roads are all cleared out by us. So I drove into Maynard anyway. Wasn't that far. Had to argue with the guard a little bit, because the building was officially closed. And I said, look, all I want to do is go into my office and pick up some papers, and I'll be right back out. What I neglected to tell him was, well, the papers that I wanted to pick up had to be printed out first. But and so I took dumps of the input directory, listings and dumps of the input directory that had failed, and what the directory on the output disk looked like, and gathered all of this stuff together and brought it home. And I looked at it for a while. And I said, you know what? The only way that we could have ended up with what I saw was that a move instruction had failed. Specifically, the VAX had these character string instructions where you could with one instruction move an entire block of text, and those got used in the directory management code because we want to insert a directory entry. We have to take what's after it and move it down and make a space. And I worked, right, and it looks like, gee, it looks like the move seat didn't happen, or most of it didn't happen. And so I called up Richie, who had worked on the 780 firmware, and I said, Richie, what do you know about MoveC? I think we've got a bug here. And he said, well, come on over. And so, he lived in the same town that I did, so I actually walked over to his house, about half a mile away. And, got to his house, and he reaches under his bed and fishes out this literally a 6-inch stack of paper, which were the listings of the 780 firmware. And we went through it, and sure enough, the MoveC instruction had a bug, which it turned out, if the size of the string being moved was just a couple bytes more than 256, it was moving the odd bytes but not the remaining 256. So anyway, yeah, so that was how I spent the great blizzard of '78.